But let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I wanted to welcome all of our attendees to our second session of the Young Alumni Speaker Series. My name is Andrew Granholm. I am the Chicago Chapter School Chair, and I wanted to thank all of our attendees for joining us this evening. So we know that the past few months have been a really hard time for everyone, very uncharted territory. And we want to recognize the uncertainty and just world right now and how turbulent, like there's a lot of anxiety going on. So we want to recognize that. But in the midst of everything, we're hoping that tonight's events is going to provide some sense of levity and then also some sense of comfort as well to our community during this time. So really to give the whole group an overview of what the Young Alumni Speaker Series is, it originated from the reality that some young alumni that graduate don't have necessarily an intimate familiarity with what they want to do after graduation. So while most alumni secure like jobs immediately after in fields like consulting or banking or decide to go to graduate school, others pursue paths less taken. So really in an effort to promote young alumni engagement, as well as career development, the speaker series will feature alumni from a broad range of industries and provide attendees really with the opportunity to hear about different career paths, industries and jobs, and also like just other people's experience navigating their careers, as everyone's journey differs. So we hope that this personal and career journeys that we'll showcase in these series really help like our attendees here navigate their own career journey as well. So tonight it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend, Rebecca Chong, as our featured speaker. So for our attendees, let me give you a little bit of Rebecca's bio here. She grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, moved to Orlando, Florida, and found herself in Nashville on the Ingram Commons. So Rebecca graduated from Vanderbilt in 2016 from the College of Arts and Sciences. She created her own interdisciplinary major titled Multicultural and Diversity Studies and minored in Human Organizational Development. So while at Vandy, Rebecca worked with the Office of Undergraduate Admissions as a tour guide exec member, admissions assistant, and co-chair of Mosaic Multicultural Recruitment Weekend. She was also involved in the Vanderbilt Student Government, the Multicultural Leadership Council, and Vanderbilt Greek Life. She studied abroad in Morocco, undergraduate research, and graduated with a job opportunity at Google in San Francisco. At Google, she worked as a customer and product specialist, an intern manager, a diversity program manager and facilitator, and a vendor operations quality analyst. She now lives in Denver and works on the Google People Operations team as a diversity and equity program manager. Rebecca Chong was elected Young Alumni Leader in April 2016 and served a 3-year term on the Vanderbilt Alumni Association Board. She joined the Vanderbilt Board of Trusts on July 1st, 2019 for a 2-year term. And Rebecca, I wanted to thank you for being here tonight. Before turning it over to you, I just want to let our attendees know, should you have any questions for Chong, please feel free to put them in the chat function or the Q&A function. Give me one sec. The Q&A or the chat function. And then we'll go ahead and ask Rebecca those questions. So I think with all of that said, I'll take a break because that was like a hit workout there. And then I'll pass it over to our guest, Rebecca.
Oh man, what an introduction. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here chatting with you. It's been a long time, so I can't see who's on the webinar, but hopefully some friendly faces and some new people as well. They asked me to put together a presentation and I felt like that was quite bold, but I did to help with visuals since we're virtual, and it's more so a hodgepodge of my experiences and learnings over time, and we can take it or leave it, and I think the questions will probably be the most helpful. So I think we're good to go, but I'll just you start clicking away. Okay, where's my, oh gosh. Okay, there we go. We don't use Zoom where I work, so we have to get used to it. But this is what I call my mostly professional principles that I made up or gathered over time. So some of these things, I honestly just found a quick phrase to remember them in my head of this concept or experience that I went through. I'm only 4 years out of graduating, but some of these I made up in college or even before. And I'm still learning, so I'm sure these are going to develop, but I stuck to these over time and they've really served me well. So I figured it would help me organize my thoughts and hopefully trigger some questions from the group. These are not in order, so these are not steps or like a path you take or I took necessarily, but they can be used together or in combination or honestly on their own as just moments, things to kind of frame certain experiences, especially in the ambiguous time post-grad. So the first thing I talk about is kind of this idea of like strategically stumbling. So this is the path I took, I guess, the what I did is what I sometimes call it, what you'd see on my resume, but I think these moments really stood out to me. I was at Vanderbilt. Andrew you explained my bio. I don't need to go into that. But then I had this moment of the Google internship. And I think that was really significant for me because it led me to realize the different opportunities I could have after graduating beyond what my perception really was at school. I had no idea tech was an industry that had more than tech. I thought it was, they had non-tech, they had these really amazing opportunities to be really innovative outside of kind of these typical pathways I thought people were taking or I needed to also take. And so the internship was really formative for me and led me to go back, and I worked in global customer experience, which I held various different roles and rotations and opportunities, which was a really fantastic experience as a young grad to have kind of a taste of so many different roles and subject matters to figure out what I liked, but also what I didn't like. I think that's just as important. And then I knew, though, I started inching towards these kind of, lack of a better acronym, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion programs and rotations and projects. And at Google, you can do 20% projects, which are kind of like being part of a student org almost at Vanderbilt. So I started obviously gravitating towards that. Vanderbilt taught me well that I loved doing those types of things, but it really allowed me to follow some passions that I had, especially around equity work. And ultimately kind of, again, led into this place where I am now, which is an equity program manager. Equity is in diversity and equity, not stock equity, which sometimes people get confused. But I think this is what I thought, leaving was going to look like. And what I think when I even look at my resume, I'm like, oh, wow, like I looked like I really had it together. And then it's just like not what it felt like. And I think this is more of what my experience was. And I identify strongly with the giraffe of the creature being lanky and a little awkward, but can be graceful at times once they get their footing. And I coined this in college. So if you talk to me in college, I probably told you this phrase, strategically stumble. But I think it describes how I've gotten places and how I've navigated, and how I think a lot of my peers and I've seen people navigate is finding an opportunity that you're passionate about, investing in it, doing it well and learning from it and gaining something from that, whether it's you love it and you want to follow through and keep going, or you don't like it, or you learned a skill, or you gained another experience and it will lead you to the next thing. And I really believe in that. And I know that's a little bit more fate-like. So there's the strategic part in front of it. I mean, you're following things that you are interested in that align to your values, your goals, your passions. And I think when you combine those together, it feels like a strategic stumble. And so that's one of my little phrases I use a lot. I think the next thing I think about in my fake principles is this thing I made up called the learning lens. I think one thing I remember is that I find myself a lot on the left, or I did sometimes, and I feel like a lot of millennials or younger folks find themselves in this area of, what am I going to do next? Like, what's next? Like, what's the next step? Like, what am I doing? Like, I got here, now I have to look to the next thing. And I think I realized like I had to shift that story to being, I'm so young. My first job is not going to be my dream job. And if it is, and if someone finds their dream job as their first job, like, fantastic, good for you, but let me know. I'd be really curious. I think I knew that, and it shifted my perspective of like, it's not what it is, it's what that will gain, or what you will gain from that. And I think, what do I want to learn next? Like, how do I need to keep growing? And even in my time at Google, those different experiences were moments when I realized, oh my gosh, I need to, like, I'm plateauing. I need something now. I need to find a way to keep growing. I need another opportunity. Or, I went to do customer service at Google. It wasn't this glamorous thing. Like, I was talking to advertisers on like a helpline, essentially, was my first job. And I knew that was the job because I had the internship, but I also knew Google was a place I was going to learn so much and grow so much, and had these opportunities where I could do that, and I could become kind of the person that I wanted to start becoming after graduating, and also kind of guide me into the places that I wanted to be spending my time. And so that's why I start anchoring back on this. And I've fallen into the left more than I thought in the last few years, thinking, what am I doing next? And I've had to kind of shake myself and move back into the right. And so, I don't know, something I made up that helps me think through, and like a reality check of like, I'm in my 20s still. Another concept that I actually picked up and stole from a Vanderbilt speaker my senior year that came to school, is this idea that career ladders are kind of an outdated concept, and they're not linear. You don't have this super clear, you join an organization or a company and you're going to work there for 45 years. Maybe you will. I don't want to say that. I don't know everyone's path, but I found that, at least for me and a lot of my peers, and what I was noticing was that you're kind of more so building portfolios, and you're building portfolios of your experiences that are really great, and can be these really diverse and beautiful collections, but they're not necessarily like a clear ladder or a pathway, or like you look back and it's this very, and you can look forward into what exactly it would be. I think the idea of pivoting and moving and being flexible, which is really common in the future of work, is represented more in this way of thinking about your resume as a portfolio instead of a pathway. And so that's another one of my slides. Okay, I don't think we're at the end. We're almost there. So my last, or second to last one, is finding your why. Oh, I'm so philosophical sometimes. It's probably my best and worst quality at work, but this is hard. I think this is something I'm still going to be figuring out as I become a human, and continue to be a human. We're going to keep evolving, but I think this was something that was really valuable for me, and I feel I was really lucky to start doing that at an earlier age, but I've continued to kind of solidify and articulate what those things are that will help me kind of stay on track of my values and aligning to the things that I really care about, and spending the time doing things that I want to, and kind of serve me, and also the things that I believe in. And so this happened to me. I mean, when I was at Google, I applied for this 20% project about racial equity kind of topic. And I met with the lead. It's really impressive. I thought she was the coolest person. I still think she's probably one of the coolest people I've met, kind of running it. And she was like, why are you interested in this? And I was like, oh, because yada, yada, yada. I don't remember what I said. And she's like, no, but why? And I was like, oh, because yada, yada, yada. And then she's like, but why? And she kept asking me why. And it really threw me off guard. And I then had to actually formally apply for the role. And I remember sitting there and being like, all right, well, I better figure it out. And I was forced into it a little bit more. But it kind of started making me think, okay, how could I actually articulate what these things are? And it's been really funny recently, having friends tell me what they are. And I'm like, how did you know that? And knowing and kind of matching the values that I live, and then the values and the things that I clearly care about are visible to my friends and my peers. And so this is hard. I'm still doing it. I'm sure maybe something will change over time, but right now I think it really helped me ground in some type of direction, and it gives me some flexibility. And I'll talk about in my next thing about thinking about goals versus plans, or maybe goals are a little bit better than plans, or maybe they should come first. I don't know how you want to put it, but I think this one was something I gathered at Google, and I love planning. Like I love an itinerary, I love a checklist, I love an agenda, I love a project plan. Like you have to do those things. That's how goals become a reality. And goals are supposed to be timely and etc. But I kind of think of them more broadly. I think I've learned that I need to anchor on the goals. And I think this GIF of 2020, I put that there because I feel like the universe was really testing me of whether or not I could stick to my philosophy or principle that I had made up for myself. I think setting a goal for myself of where I want to be, or what I want to do, or the things I envision myself experiencing has made me be more flexible and more nimble. I feel more satisfied. I'm less disappointed. I think I learned this at Vanderbilt. I learned this before Vanderbilt. I probably learned this way earlier in my development, but it was very present, probably after college, that the things that you imagine yourself doing are not really there until it happens. And so I think I just learned, like, let's just start from the onset of having this expectation, and not being ambitious, but being realistic of how can I frame this in a way that will help me actually get there faster, because I'm not dealing with the frustration or replanning or reorganizing my 5-year plan because it didn't work out. Instead, I can say, okay, one of my goals is to be a professor. I don't know. I just was like, you know what? One day I realized that is who I'm going to be. I know it's going to be my last job. I can just, maybe not last job, but it will be something I do. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. That's the plan, but I know it's a goal. And right now I'm like, okay, well, I want to become an expert in certain fields and follow and focus on the opportunities and help me do that. I started making a plan, and I started thinking, okay, I'm going to leave Google at this time. I'm going to go get my PhD, and then I'm going to start working, and then I'll be a professor. And I had a point last year. I was like, that's not that doesn't feel right. I actually am learning so much right now, and I don't need to do that right away. And I had to shake myself again and be like, stop planning, make a goal. And when the plan is able to be made, it will happen because you already have the goals set up. And so that's just how I've been thinking. I knew I wanted to move closer to my family, and I'm in Florida right now. I didn't think it was going to come in 2020, but I think being able to be close to my family right now, again, another thing that in my back of my head, it was easy decision making because I knew it was already something that I had wanted to do again and be close here for a period of time. So the last thing I end with is another made up thing that I've done, but it's kind of tied to these goal philosophy, the matching game, I call it. It's like in elementary school, or I guess you can still do it now. You kind of like have these matching games where you match different categories. And so this is like a 3-way matching game that I made up, But it was really helpful finding my next job in this period where it feels like there's so many things I'm interested in and so many things that I care about and so many things I could do. And Google doesn't have a very clear directionality, which I like, but it was overwhelming, to be honest. It was almost too much flexibility. And so I made this up where I kind of wrote down the things I like doing. So kind of like, I like program management. I like XYZ. I like working on a team. Like it could be activities or skills. And then I had like the topics I care about. So like the subject matter that I ideally wanted to be working within that topic. And then the things I wanted to learn or become better at. So kind of the role that like the majority of my time, how would I be spending it? Or would I be able to gain this skill XYZ? And so when I was looking for things, I kind of just tried to have a matching thread, kind of go through all three categories with as many as possible, if possible. Maybe not the topic area, that could maybe be a little mutually exclusive. But for the rest, I did try to weave them all in, and it just opened my eyes to, I didn't have to plan like, okay, I want to be on this team. I want to be this job. I had no idea my current role existed because it didn't. It was a new team. I was the first team at Google to do this job. But when it came up and I saw it pop up internally, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. It checked all of the matches. And so it's kind of just a little example of how I think reframing into thinking about goals first and really anchoring on the goals, and then the planning will come. And you can make plans and accordingly when the time is right to make them. So I'll end there with my little, mostly professional principles to kind of guide maybe some questions, but also I know, Andrew, you have a few questions ready. But I'm happy to talk about anything. I really am very transparent and flexible.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, disclaimer, I'm sure a lot of you all knew all of these things. It was just a way for me to share them in a quick, easy way. And I am only, 4 years out of school, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But maybe it resonated with some people.
Well, I definitely say you're wise beyond your years. So that was a lovely presentation, and I actually had a few questions too as like you were going through it. And I was thinking of like even me as like coming out and then being in kind of a similar situation at Amazon where great tech company, great opportunities, and then working essentially like moving boxes in a fulfillment center. And I'm really wondering how you have a very concrete why, which you strategically stumbled on. But in those situations of navigating that like threshold and sourcing those opportunities really to align with your goals, I'm kind of wanting to know how you navigated that, because I feel like there's a part of the process where you're like, oh, this is something that I really want to do. And then there's like a threshold is like, am I going to be able to do it? I'm not qualified for this. So I want to get your take on kind of like, how do you navigate almost like, I call it the threshold, but also like sourcing some of those opportunities that better align with your why. I know that's charged, and that's a lot to take up.
Yeah. So. Trying to pick apart the question so I can answer it as clearly so I don't go down the rabbit hole. I think in the first part of my role, you do have to learn to somewhat prioritize at the time, and what your present moment is and what you're going through. And I think for me, I knew I had to prioritize my job. Like I was there to do a job, and I understood that. And I think I didn't start exploring maybe these other opportunities in conjunction to my like full-time job until I was at least like 9 months into Google. And so I did take time to make sure I could like really understand and do well at what I was hired to do. And it was a business. I was there to perform a role. And I think that was one thing of just like prioritizing that. I think then I started to explore. And I think I didn't figure it exactly, this list of like things I needed to do at all. It was very intuitive of, okay, I definitely want to find something in, DEI space and topic. So I started looking internally and just kind of perusing and seeing what was out there. I ended up finding this 20%. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to apply. But there were definitely moments where I was like, oh, maybe I should apply for this. And then I decided not to. Or there were moments where I did stuff and tried things out and I did not like them. And I tried out like a product role that I was like, you know what? I finished it. It just wasn't for me. And so I don't think, every single thing you're going to do is going to be completely exactly aligned to your values and going to be this really, really exact step forward that you're envisioning. I think some of the things you have to do are also to understand if you don't like doing them. I think I had maybe a little bit more of a safety net with being able to explore these side projects while doing my job. And when it was really the serious question about pivoting my full-time role is where I just took time. And so I didn't rush into like running away from a job into something just to get out of what I was doing. I really wanted to run towards the next thing for my full-time real job. And I think that is where I maybe put a little bit more thought and kind of did the matching game was really what helped me, because it really helped me align, and I had to be a little bit broader of, okay, if I do this, I can be flexible to figure out, I guess, what my threshold is, to use your language, but I can also stay, true to my values and not jump ship too quickly just because the first job comes up that I can get. So that's how, I don't know if I answered your question. I got a little
you did, because like I go in circles. That's why with my mind, I'm like, oh, let me put this in here. It's like, and then like bumps everything. But you answered my question perfectly. But more to not as a fully like finding your life kind of question. It's like, so we do have a question from someone who we both know, Miss Cherry. So she's wondering, like, what's the greatest lesson that you learned from Vandy and then from Google?
Goodness. Let me think. The greatest lesson I learned. So many lessons. I think one of the biggest learnings, because I'm sure there's others that are equally weighted and had an impact, but one that I can think of right now is doing what I felt was right for myself, I guess I should say. I think that there was a lot of comparison and a lot of path making that you started to see people think they needed to follow, and seeing people go in certain directions. And I think comparison, is a thief of joy, as they say. And I remember when I made my major, people were like, why did you do that? It does, like, what are you going to do with it? Or, oh man, I wish I could do that. And I was like, well, why don't you? I don't understand. And it was a little bit of maybe a little bit of my innocence, but I think it confirmed, doing what I'm really passionate about and doing what I care about is how I want to live my life and how I want to do what I need to do. And I think that was an important lesson I learned, was that if you do follow, what you believe in and what you think is right for yourself, it will benefit you in some way or form, whether it guides you in a new direction or it kind of propels you into where you're already headed. And so, I don't know, more philosophical again, but I think what I learned from Google, goodness, I learned to be flexible. I think I have typically been a relatively flexible person in how I maybe navigate careers, but I think in immediate moments, I can get bogged down on, what I think I should be doing, or even just in the immediate planning of that day or that project or that task. And so I think Google has kind of showed me that a lot of things are not linear anymore, especially in tech, and being able to navigate through that and using that power and that superpower, kind of finding it in you of where it is. And it also taught me that I was good at it. And I didn't really realize that. And I didn't have the words to kind of describe, navigating ambiguity. But it really confirmed how valuable that is. And whether it's inside, my job or outside my job, I think that skill was something that it really brought forward for me and taught me was so important in so many different ways.
That's excellent. Like, I love, honestly, personally, I love the philosophical answer. In fact, like my follow-up question, because like just looking at and knowing you at Vandy, and then also looking at your career at Google, you like tried a lot of things and really beat to your own drum. You still beat to your own drum, girl. So like my question is, as someone that I could personally say I've suffered the buzzword imposter syndrome, really, and like having that doubt in your mind is like, I'm passionate about this thing, I know my why, but like when the world is like doubting you and your why, like what is your advice to like some of like the young alumni that feel that? Because I think it's a very valid thing that a lot of people face each day, is like,
Mhm.
do I belong here? Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, this is my truth, but the world is telling me this is not my truth. So that's another philosophical question, girl. You could take whatever part of that you want. Like,
Um, that's a hard question. I did, I think one, it's really normal to have that experience. I think that's one thing I had to understand as well was how normalized that could be. I think I was really fortunate with had these very jolting, almost onboarding experiences into these moments I mentioned earlier, where I kind of had, these really formative experiences where I realized, like, wow, this is okay. Do I belong here? Do I fit in here? Okay. How am I going to then show I can fit in here? And I think I feel lucky that I had that at Google with the internship experience. I think that was like a little bit of a sandbox for me to figure that out. But I think in terms of advice, I think one of the things I had to acknowledge, and honestly, this has even happened to me recently, and maybe imposter syndrome may be a different phrase, but I kind of lost a lot of confidence in my work. I think I started becoming at this period where I thought I was not doing well until I was told otherwise, versus I used to be more confident and think I'm doing great until I'm told otherwise. I don't know, I think you want the happy medium, or you do want to think you're doing well if you feel like you're doing well. And we could I think that's a strain of imposter syndrome, maybe in different vocabulary, but I think one of the things I learned was I had to recognize it. And I didn't know it was happening until someone else told me. And so asking for feedback, being transparent about it, whether it's in a work setting with your peers or your managers, or if you could be open about, I'm nervous about how I'm doing. I don't know if I'm performing at the level of your expectations, and can you validate where I should be on, and actually just making sure you're on the same page. And it's like you have to have a little bit of tunnel vision in order to move forward from those moments, because it can feel really paralyzing. And so that's probably what would be my advice, is to reflect, if you have somebody within your work setting that can support you. I'm all about transparency with your peers and your managers, probably your managers, or the people that are evaluating you and helping you, set your expectations for your role or your job. That's where I would start. But I think acknowledging it and understanding it is important as first step.
Oh yeah, 100%, like that transparency, and then also the confidence. I'm not sure if confidence is necessarily the right word, but like having the comfort really to go to your like managers and
Yeah.
navigate those conversations. We actually have quite a few questions in the chat, so I'm gonna
I have
share.
a follow-up though. Quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think something I learned, I don't know when, again, another thing I picked up. There's a difference between like self-confidence and like self-efficacy, I think is the phrase I use, but it's this idea that you know you can do something. Like self-efficacy is like, I am capable of doing this. Like I know I can do it. And I think that's how I think about combating sometimes these moments of imposter syndrome or these moments of anxiety of I should not be in this room right now. Like I am, 27, and these people are like way more important than me. And that happens to me a lot. But then thinking, okay, but I can be here, and I'm here for a reason. And so this idea of like self-efficacy versus like self-confidence, I think was something that I try to, distinguish between and anchor more on that of knowing like I'm capable of it versus like I know I'm gonna kill it and do well. I think that is not my thing. It's more like I know I can tackle this. So let's see how it goes and how can I figure out the best way or a way to do this with the current skills I have. And I think that's more of where I focus on. So anyways, we can
Ooh,
go
I
to
love that.
yeah.
Self-confidence versus self. I'm gonna have to take that one because
Yeah,
that
I
one.
have that. I have a sixth principle.
I can't wait
Uh,
for the book to be published. Like I'll be there buying it here.
maybe I'll
Professor
be moving
Chong.
activity in the next 2 months.
I mean, like, not a
Oh,
bad idea. So we have a couple of questions in the chat that I want to get to. So one of them is related to the idea of the learning lens. What are some examples of things that you did to continue learning and growing? And then like with that growth and learning, like what happened as a result?
yes, great questions. Again, I think, I recognize my Google circumstance was a really fantastic place for me to do this learning. And so they have a culture of kind of learning and growing while you're working, obviously in your core role. But I found for me, I'm a very experiential learner, and I really value these experiences that can help me learn or build skill sets. And so whether it was on my team, for example, like I joined the onboarding team within my first role once I was tenured enough to kind of have another responsibility. And so I helped onboard Nooglers or the new people to our team. And that was, this huge learning experience for me where I had an older mentor that was kind of phasing out and was helping me, become the new onboarding lead. And so I think those experiences I was able to gain and those opportunities I kind of started snagging. There was an opportunity to do like a product, like this mini product based project with engineering and our team. And I was like, oh, let me try it. Like my friend told me to apply. Really, like the first thing I was like, oh, new shiny thing. Like that looks cool. Let me see if I like it or not. Like maybe this will help me distinguish where I want to go. And so again, another like experience that I was able to do. So I think those things have definitely been formative. I think taking classes outside of my role, I took like a really intensive series and part of kind of a extra side project I did. But I think finding those opportunities, I was lucky they were within work, but I think there's so many opportunities now online outside of work. And I'm a big reader. I think recently for my own team, I collected a lot of different research and articles and made it my job to kind of be the at-home researcher and kind of learning and development for my team. And so I've been fortunate to have it weaved into my role and my job and the time I spend at Google. But I think, if I zoom out, it's like what experiences could I have found for myself in conjunction if I didn't have that time at Google. And I probably would have inched towards them. I could see myself wanting to itch the scratch, is how I think I said it one time. Of like, I know I'm going to need to do something to stimulate my mind and continue to grow. I was lucky it was at Google, but I think finding those things outside of Google too is definitely possible.
And like, it is excellent that you have those opportunities like at Google, but to your point too, and what I found, like even with myself during the pandemic, there's so many other things that are available at your disposal, like through volunteering, through like even just like internal work, as you were saying, to do those developments. So sorry, I went on a tangent there because I'm looking at all these questions. Some of them, like, do you want an easy one or do you want a hard one, Chong?
I mean, you're the moderator. You can do whatever you think is best.
Okay. Well, let's start with the easy one and then we'll transition to a hard one.
Okay.
So we have a question on what's your top work from home tip?
Oh gosh, I feel like that's harder.
Oh, let me find another one.
No, I'll answer it. My top work from home tip is to find routine moments. I call them moments because I think I don't want to be too hard on myself if they don't happen during the day, but I feel really good when they do. And so I kind of, know I want to listen to this one podcast every day, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon while I'm eating lunch. Like I have something that I'm going to do every day. I think having a routine of sorts, could be maybe easier to visualize, but mine's a little bit more flexible. I have my coffee, I look at my emails, I'll listen to my podcast. I think another one for me has been boundaries, like setting boundaries with work from home and being able to have an area or physical space that is you don't touch unless you're working. Like no, not it's maybe you can see it because we can't really separate anymore, but I'm not going to go in the zone. It's like there's an invisible layer, and that has really helped me. And I think whether it has to be a more extreme situation where you put it in different rooms or you separate it, but I think creating boundaries with the space or even time, knowing you're not going to work after a certain hour, or knowing that you want to stop working at this time, but you maybe are okay working a little bit more tomorrow, and just figuring out what your kind of boundaries for yourself to build some type of delineation in your day, I think has helped me have maintained my stability.
Oh, that boundaries is key. It's like, I live in a 1-bedroom, but I'm like, okay, the kitchen is only going to be used for this. It's like,
Yeah.
And then my little nook, that's only going to be used for work, but that's not entering my bedroom. So
Yeah.
what's a podcast out of curiosity?
Oh, it's everyone's podcast, The Daily, New York Times.
Oh, okay. I love that one. That's on my little Alexa lineup.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you. Alexa's gotten me through quarantine.
Michael Barrow. Anyways.
And then this one's a more heavily charged. I'm not even sure if we could even dissect this and even the next day. But like one of the questions, and this is more pertaining to your role, is like how can more companies prioritize diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I had a conversation with my team today about this. There's an interesting article, HBR article, Harvard Business Review, about, the topic is like automatically adding diversity to your company, meaning you hire people more of like a representation diversity. Doesn't automatically mean your company is going to be a diverse place, or it's not going to automatically do anything. You have to have a very thoughtful approach to making sure, one, those voices are heard, those voices are valued, and whether it's within the policies and strategies that the company is taking. I think that it was just an interesting topic, so it reminded me. But the question was, how can more companies value or enhance? What was the word they used? Diversity, inclusion?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. It's a really important question. I think one thing I've noticed is that the employees have a really powerful voice. And I've noticed that from Google. I think I'm fortunate to be at a place that was prioritizing this work and was thinking about this before maybe I think the resurgence of this focus in the United States and even the world of racial equity was starting to kind of bubble up again. And I think, the employees are a really big influencer to the company. What's tricky is I strongly believe that a companies should be prioritizing this. And I think that if a company has, values to impact the world and impact certain groups and populations, and they have a responsibility within that social impact to prioritize it. So it's a hard question for me because I'm not a CEO. And I kind of probably would just agree with what you're asking me. Like I have the same question, to be honest. I think I have ideas of how they can do it. I think getting them to prioritize it, and like how they could get to a point to prioritize it. I think we're in a huge cultural shift and people are starting to kind of have these like reckoning moments and awakenings with racial inequity in the United States and across the world, and other inequities that they're also noticing from a social stratification. And so my hope is that we're in this really cool turning point where it's kind of a significant shift. Not to say that this hasn't been gradually happening over time, but I think it's very visible right now. And so my hope is that companies do start to prioritize it. I have the same question, to be very, very transparent, and I hope that we can push companies to keep doing that by different community organizing and prioritizing it as employees, because companies can't function without people that work for them. So I think that's also valuable too, is that people do have power, and working for places that have those values, the other places need to get into line. They're very competitive. And so I think that could be a strategy, we take as a generation, but I can't speak for every millennial in that way, but it's a great question. I still have it.
It's one that I'm also curious about, even with my own company, is now that we have due awareness, like how do we keep that action and momentum going? So I'm with you, but I agree, like that talent piece is crucial. And then we have 8 more minutes. So I have a few more questions, and then we'll end on just like a really easy one because like I'm also interested in this. But I think so kind of to that point as well, for like diversity and inclusion work, in what ways I think maybe like some people are curious about specifically leveraging some of like your Vanderbilt experience in your role now. Do you see like a lot of what you learned kind of like at Vanderbilt in like that multicultural space and being applied in your role right now at Google?
Yes. I majored in multicultural, or made my own major, which is, we could call it whatever we want to call it, racial ethnic studies, multicultural diversity studies, every topic I could take on like race and identity at Vandy. And then I did HOD, which was like applied psychology. And that's kind of what my job is right now, is both of those subject matters kind of merged together within a heavier focus on the subject matter expertise. I think that Vanderbilt, the learnings I gained, one, in the classroom, gave me a very great foundation for entering kind of this space in a full-time role. But I did not stop learning about, the different topics, and I had to learn about them in a different industry and space and kind of push my learning even further. But I think it gave me a little bit of a head start to be able to start doing that maybe earlier than if I hadn't. And I think the learnings outside the classroom, when I was working within the student organizations, whether it was, the different groups I was a part of, and understanding the different dynamics and how to make change and drive things forward, within various different priorities and groups. It's definitely something that I'm seeing within a sticky subject matter, within an institution that is of people that are maybe at a different, starting point than you are. So short answer, yes. I definitely did. And I'm so lucky that I'm in basically my, perfect role for me, for my age and level.
Oh yeah, because to your point, it's like you're 27 and you're taking on the world.
Well,
So,
not all of it, just Google.
like I would say that's a big part of the world though. And then our last, I think, so we have 5 minutes, and then I think we have a very important question from Emmy Tom. So,
Oh gosh.
she's well, I'm curious too. It's like, what is your current binge watch right now?
Well, the Crown just came back on Netflix, and so my mom is British, and so the British line is very strong as a family. So I've been a big Crown fan on Netflix, and I didn't even know it was coming out, and so I have watched a lot of episodes in the last 2 days. I'll say that. I won't admit how much TV I can watch at one time to this large of a group, but that's my current binge, and then Great British Bake Off. But that is,
love it.
That's not a binge because they only release one at a time. But The Crown is more of the binge category. We can ask another question if you want, or if you wanted to close out.
Yeah, well, let me see. We also, we've gotten through pretty much most of them. But I think the last one, there's also one about like, what is your go-to pub order from Sherry? Yeah, go-to
Like
pub order. I think like gastropub, English pub.
like pub. Okay, I'll answer both. The pub from Vanderbilt was the buffalo chicken quesadillas. I still think about them. And I really should recreate them now that I'm here. Oh, the pub at Over a Cup Oak, yes. I think that was my go-to order. I don't think I ordered really anything else because I knew it was a winner when I got there. And then, I think it depends what type of pub we're at, Sherry. If we're at, an English pub or an Americanized pub, gastro pub, the orders will vary.
Oh, yeah, very clarified. Definitely the Vandy pub. I was just, cool. It took me a while to kind of like put two and two together.
Okay, so my inclination was right. Well, then, yes, buffalo chicken.
100%. With the ranch dipping sauce too, I had to get the ranch. If there was no ranch, I couldn't.
Yep. Yeah. So good.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, and that pretty much brings us to like towards the end. I want to make sure, and I think I want to end on this note. This is gonna just be a free-for-all, completely you. If you have any advice or one thing that you wish you had known coming out as like a newly minted graduate, and now 4 years later, having known what you know, what would you wish you would have known when you were just like recently graduated that you now know now?
Man, I might get emotional talking about this because I had to think about this because I knew it was going to be a question. I think it's that work will always be there. I think I focused too much on work after graduating and prioritized that over the things I needed to, which, work will be there. It's not going to go anywhere. I think, I was really fortunate to have that opportunity and I could go back to it. And I think looking at things with a bigger perspective of, do you need to step back for yourself, for your family? And looking back, I wish I would have told myself and actually believed that. And I think now I can do that. And now I'm in that place where I know how to prioritize the things that are really important to me. But I think, man, I wish I would have been able to tell myself that when I was 22. Not that long ago, but that second year out of college, I wish I really would have just told myself, like, work will be there. Family and the people you love won't always be there. So take advantage of that.
And I think on that note, with that wise words of wisdoms there. Oh, excuse me. Wise word of wisdom. Wise words of wisdom. I'd like to thank you again, Chong, for joining us on this evening to share your life, your expertise, your persona with us. And then thank you again. This was lovely. And I could speak on behalf of all of our attendees and our young alumni, I'm sure, and that knowing that that this was an excellent conversation, and thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time. So, all right. Well,
Second song, everyone.
Oh, yes. Thanks. No need for applause. We're all in the same place, honestly, just different points. Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone, and I'll, I guess, hop off.
Yeah. And then I think we're gonna, I just want to remind all the attendees before they start to hop off, there will be a survey sent. So if you guys have any ideas of what you want to see from the series, give us your thoughts, opinions, pizzazz. And that's all I have. But thank you for joining us, John. It was nice getting to talk to you after these long years.
It's really great for us, really catch up.
Let me tell you, it's like we're gonna have to have a whole separate side conversation. Like,
I know. Well,
it's like, ooh. Well, I'll talk to you later, Sharp.
bye.